With a newly confirmed Justice Amy Coney Barrett and a 6-3 conservative majority in the Supreme Court, the pro-life movement is buzzing about whether we might soon see Roe versus Wade chipped away.
Hope, progress, justice! Hope, progress, justice!
Those are the sounds of protests outside the Supreme Court during the Amy Coney Barrett confirmation battle. It's the nation's debate over abortion on display, as a Justice Barrett means the nation's highest court is in possible position to chip away at Roe versus Wade. That is the 1973 Supreme Court ruling that legalized abortion nationwide. The same case that brings tens of thousands of pro-lifers to Washington, D.C. each year for the annual March for Life. With the battle over Roe in the nation's spotlight, we wanted to bring you a special edition of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly to answer all your Roe-related legal and cultural questions. Kevin Theriot is Senior Counsel and Vice President of the Center for Life for Alliance Defending Freedom. He joins us on Skype now to answer our legal questions surrounding abortion at the courts. Kevin, welcome. First, is it possible to overturn Roe v. Wade? How do you begin to address that big question?
Thanks, Catherine. I appreciate you having me on. And yes, it is possible, but the Supreme Court is likely to do it in a series of cases that incrementally begins to undermine Roe and then minimize its reach. And we would expect this to start with a challenge to a pro-life law that doesn't necessarily completely ban abortion, but regulates it in some way, like a pre-viability regulation or a eugenics regulation.
Kevin, we always talk about Roe v. Wade and the pro-life movement, but can you explain how Planned Parenthood v. Casey in 1992 built upon Roe?
Well, Casey was an opportunity to overturn Roe, and instead it limited Roe in some ways. But the bottom line is we get our test for whether a regulation of abortion is constitutional from Casey. And it essentially is this, that as long as a state is not posing a substantial obstacle to abortion access, that regulation is permissible if it's reasonable and relates to a legitimate state interest. So regulations, even regulations that we saw like in the June medical case this past term, requiring hospital admitting privileges, those can be constitutional, even though the court found that particular one was not.
Kevin, you briefly mentioned this already, but what are potential cases in the pipeline now that would challenge Roe v. Wade?
Well, there are several in the pipeline now. As a matter of fact, the Supreme Court will consider a case out of Mississippi in the next week or two, the Jackson Women's Health versus Dobbs, which is a regulation of abortion after 15 weeks. And although that case was struck down by the Court of Appeals, the Supreme Court has a chance to consider whether it will take it in the next week or two. There's also a great law out of Missouri that's in the pipeline that's being considered by the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals in St. Louis, and a law out of Ohio that limits abortion and prohibits abortion of Down syndrome people. And that's in the pipeline too. All of those are great candidates.
Wow. Kevin, do you think it is likely with the makeup of the Supreme Court right now that we could overturn Roe versus Wade? Should this be a focus of the pro-life movement?
Well, we don't know how justices are going to rule on any particular case in any given case, but what we do know is that in the past, the conservative justices have signaled that Roe v. Wade was improperly decided. Even the late Justice Ginsburg said that it wasn't decided on the proper rationale. So the decision is ripe for overturning. We think that we have justices in place that will understand that things have changed since Roe was decided. We have new technology and that shows the development of the baby. We have new evidence that abortion is harmful to women and it's harmful to the medical profession.
Absolutely. Well, Kevin Theriot with Alliance Defending Freedom, thank you so much for sharing your legal insight with us, and thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having me on, Catherine. I appreciate it.